There's a strange quiet that comes after a battle, not the silence of peace, but the silence of interruption. Like the world isn't sure whether to keep fighting or stop breathing altogether. That's the quiet we woke up to the next morning. The sun rose slow and heavy over the perimeter, turning the scorched edges of the jungle into dark silhouettes against a pale orange sky. Smoke from last night's firefight still floated upward in thin, ghost-like tendrils. The dew on the sandbags glistened like sweat on skin. The base looked the same as always, but everything inside us felt different. Price was alive. Barely, but alive. Ellis stayed with him through the night, hardly moving from his side. Price drifted in and out of consciousness, asking for water, cursing, mumbling things that didn't make sense, calling out names we didn't recognize. Danny slept in the cot next to him, leg elevated and wrapped, snoring softly, the kind of sleep that only comes from surviving something your brain hasn't had time to process yet. Cruz sat awake near the entrance of the tent, rosary in hand, head bowed. The whisper of his prayer blended with the hum of the generator outside. Harper stood outside, arms crossed, staring at the smoldering tree line with eyes that looked older today, darker, deeper, like he'd aged 10 years while the rest of us slept. I woke with the familiar weight of Mary's journal resting on my chest. My ribs ached, my knees throbbed, my shoulder burned where the graze had dried into a crust of blood, but I woke, alive, breathing, whole enough. When Harper finally stepped back into the tent, he didn't speak at first. He looked at all of us, really looked. His gaze lingered on Price's pale face, on Danny's splinted leg, on the dark circles under Ellis's eyes, on Cruz's trembling hands. Then he looked at me. "Thompson," he said, "Hargrove wants to see us." "Us?" I asked. "Who's us?" "You," Harper said, "and me." Cruz looked up. "You're going to report the mission?" Harper nodded. Danny stirred. We're done, right? No more missions?" Harper knelt beside him. "Yeah," he said softly. "No more missions." Danny let out a breath that sounded like it came from his bones. Price coughed. "Don't tell them I screamed." Harper smirked despite himself. "You didn't scream." Price cracked a tiny smile. "Make sure they write that down." Ellis snorted. "I'll engrave it on your headstone." Price rolled his eyes. "Go to hell." Even that felt like hope. Harper and I walked across the camp in a silence that wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken things, memories, losses, images that hadn't faded yet. The mess hall was half full, soldiers eating quietly, stealing glances at us as we passed. Some nodded, some didn't, some stared too long. Word of what happened had spread. The second depot threat, the river explosion, the chase back to the wire, the story had grown legs. Heroes, madmen, lucky bastards, dead men walking. It depended on who you asked. When we stepped into the debrief tent, Hargrove was sitting at the table, Mallory standing beside him. Both looked exhausted, but also relieved. "Sit," Hargrove said. We did. He opened a folder. Inside were maps, photos, typed reports. "You boys stopped a catastrophic hit," Hargrove said. "You stopped the supply line feeding half their operations along that river." Harper stared at him. "We did what we had to." "And you did it damn well," Mallory added. I didn't know how to respond to that. Hargrove sighed. "Listen, I know what this has cost you. I know what last night was. I know what it could have been." His voice softened. "And I know this platoon has been carrying too much for too long." Harper swallowed. "Sir, what happens now?" Hargrove leaned back. "You boys are done here," he said. "Rotation's been approved." The world stopped for half a second. Rotation? Going home? leaving Vietnam. I blinked. Sir, what do you mean done? Exactly what it sounds like, Hargrove said. You've done your part, more than your part. The paperwork came in this morning. Your platoon is being cycled out. I felt my heart hammer against my ribs. Harper sat completely still. You're serious, he whispered. Hargrove nodded. You'll be on a convoy tomorrow morning. Medical evac for Price and Danny. Standard rotation for the rest of you. You've got 1 day to pack. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Mallory stepped forward. You earned this, all of you. Harper finally found his voice. Sir, he said slowly, this platoon is not at full strength. Half of us are wounded. He shook his head like he was trying to clear static out of his ears. Hargrove's voice softened again. Harper, men don't get rotated out because they're fine. They get rotated out because they're broken. And if we don't pull you now, this place will finish what the war started. Harper lowered his head. Hargrove added, take the day. Say your goodbyes. Pack your things. Sleep if you can. He looked directly at me. And write your letter home, he said. Your people are waiting for you. My throat tightened. Mallory stepped forward. Dismissed, he said quietly. Outside, the camp felt different. The air seemed lighter. The sky seemed brighter. The ground felt less like the enemy. But inside me, everything shook. Rotation. Going home. It didn't feel real. Harper and I walked back to the tent. Neither of us spoke the whole way. When we stepped inside, Cruz was cleaning his rifle. Danny was sipping water through clenched teeth. Price was propped up and arguing with Ellis about something petty. And for the first time in weeks, there was laughter. Small, raw, fragile, but laughter. Harper cleared his throat. Everyone looked up. What happened? Ellis asked. Harper's voice cracked on the first word. We're done. Cruz blinked. Done? Danny's face folded. Done? Or like, break done? Done, Harper repeated. We're rotating out tomorrow morning. Danny started sobbing again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Cruz crossed himself and whispered, Gracias a Dios. Price exhaled sharply, closing his eyes. About damn time. Ellis sat down hard on a crate, rubbing his face. Holy hell, we're actually going home. I felt something inside my chest loosen, something that had been clenched tight since the valley, since the ambush, since the river, since everything. Harper looked at me. You okay? He whispered. I nodded slowly. I think, I said. I'm starting to believe it. Danny wiped his face, smiling through tears. My mom, she's gonna cry so hard when she sees me. Ellis laughed. Your mom? My mother might tackle me. Cruz grinned. My sister will throw a parade. Price cracked a smile. My father, he won't say it, but he'll be proud. Harper sank onto his cot, running both hands through his hair. We made it, he whispered. God help me. We actually made it. I sat on my cot, pulled out Mary's journal and wrote, The war isn't done with us, not really. But today, for the first time in a long time, I can see the road home. I closed the journal, looked around at the faces that had survived everything with me. Harper, Cruz, Ellis, Danny, Price. Men I loved, men I feared for, men I would never forget, men I would leave with pieces of myself still tangled in the jungle. Tomorrow we would step on a plane. Tomorrow we would leave Vietnam. Tomorrow we would start becoming something other than soldiers in a war we didn't understand. But tonight was the first quiet night I'd earned in a long, long time. The last night in Vietnam didn't feel like a victory. It didn't feel real either. It felt like a dream someone else was having about us. A dream where men who lived through hell suddenly get told they can walk out of it. A dream where the war loosens its grip for one night and says, "Go on, I'm done with you." But the war doesn't let go. Not really. It just goes quiet long enough to confuse you. Evening rolled in slowly, a bruised purple sky settling over the camp like a tired eyelid. The air was heavy with humidity again, but not suffocating. It carried the scent of burnt wood, diesel, and damp earth, the smells of a place that had gotten used to men breaking apart inside it. Inside our tent, everything felt smaller. Maybe because tomorrow none of us would be here? Price lay propped up on pillows, pale but stubbornly awake. Danny sat on the cot beside him, splint on his ankle, chewing on the end of a pencil because Ellis wouldn't let him pick at his bandages. Cruz was at the table, knees pulled up, rosary wrapped around his fist. Ellis cleaned instruments he wouldn't need tomorrow. Harper leaned against a support pole, arms crossed, watching us with an expression I couldn't read. I sat on my cot with Mary's journal open on my lap. That journal had been in my hands through ambushes, through nights of fear, through letters read by lantern light. Tonight, it felt different, heavier, as if it understood it no longer had to bear witness to the worst of me. Cruz was the first to speak. "We should say something," he said, voice soft. "This is our last night together here." Price snorted. "What do you want? A campfire sing-along?" Danny elbowed him, then winced as the movement tugged at his ankle. "Don't be a jerk. He's right." Ellis rolled his shoulders, trying to stretch out the tension living there. "I'm okay with talking, but I swear, if anyone cries, I'm walking out." "You can't walk," Danny said. Ellis held up a hand. "I said what I said." Even Harper cracked a small smile. Cruz sighed and let the rosary beads fall into his lap. "We survived what we weren't supposed to survive. Every single day I prayed we'd make it. Not all of us did, but we did." Price's jaw tightened. His eyes drifted toward the empty cot in the corner. River's cot. The sheets had been pulled tight, the pillow placed neatly at the head, but it still felt like he was there somehow. Price spoke quietly. "Rivers should be here tonight." No one responded. We didn't need to. The absence spoke loud enough. Danny wiped his nose on his sleeve. I still hear him, his voice. The way he'd say my name when I messed up. The way he'd say, "Good man," when I didn't. Ellis looked down. We carry everyone who didn't come back. That's what makes us a platoon. Price nodded slowly. We carry the dead. They don't get left behind. His tone wasn't just sentiment, it was oath. Cruz whispered, "And tomorrow we carry them home in memory." Harper finally pushed off the pole and stepped forward, voice low. "I want you all to understand something," he said. "We didn't get rotated out because we were lucky. We didn't get rotated out because we finished a mission. We got rotated out because we broke enough times that command finally noticed." Danny frowned. "That's not." Harper held up a hand. "It's not shame. It's truth. This place chipped at us, took pieces, and if we stayed any longer, there wouldn't be enough left to bring home." Silence washed through the tent. I ran my thumb across the edge of Mary's journal, feeling the indent of the words I'd written the night before. Harper continued, "You all need to understand something before tomorrow. When we step on that plane, we don't become civilians again. Not right away, not fully. We take the war with us, in our minds, in our bodies, in our sleep." He looked at Danny. "In your ankle." He looked at Price. "In your scars." He looked at me. "In your pages." Then he took a long breath. "But we also take each other with us, and that's what gets us through." Price leaned back against his pillow, exhaling slowly. "So, this is our goodbye speech?" Harper shook his head. "No, this is me telling you that tomorrow is not the ending. It's the start of something we have to learn how to survive all over again." Cruz murmured, "Then we survived the homecoming." Later, the lights dimmed and the camp grew quiet, except for the occasional laugh from a distant tent or the clank of a guard checking his rifle on night watch. We stayed awake inside the tent, unwilling to sleep through our last night together. Ellis took out a deck of cards and dealt a slow, steady rhythm on the table. Cruz played with him, though neither of them paid attention to the score. It was just the motion of it, the normalcy, that mattered. Danny leaned back on his cot and closed his eyes. "I wonder what our houses look like now." Price chuckled. "Probably exactly like before." "Not our parents' houses," Danny said softly. "I mean our houses, the places where we'll live after this. I never really thought about it until now." I looked at him. "What do you think it'll look like?" He smiled faintly. "Quiet, and without bugs." Cruz laughed. "Impossible." Ellis shook his head. "My house better not have mosquitoes the size of helicopters." Price closed his eyes. "My house better have a locked front door and neighbors who mind their business." Harper looked over at him. "You planning to become a hermit?" "Absolutely," Price answered. We all chuckled. Cruz turned to me. "Thompson, what do you think your home looks like?" I didn't answer right away. I thought of Mary, her handwriting, her patience, her steady words in her letters. "I think," I said slowly, "my home looks like the woman who waited for me." Harper nodded. "Good answer." Danny smiled. "She must be something special." I swallowed. "She is." The tent grew quiet again. Cruz clasped his rosary. "Tomorrow feels unreal." Ellis nodded. "Tomorrow feels dangerous." Price smirked. "Everything feels dangerous to you?" "No," Ellis countered. "Not like this. This isn't danger. This is anticipation." Cruz whispered, "It feels like the night before confession." Danny looked confused. "Confession?" Cruz nodded. "When you step into a church after doing something you regret, you don't know if God will forgive you, but you have to walk in anyway." Price opened one eye. "So tomorrow's confession?" "No," Cruz said. "Tomorrow's absolution." Harper looked down at his boots, face unreadable. "If absolution exists." I saw something break quietly inside him when he said it, something he didn't show often. I wanted to say something to him, something reassuring, something steady. But before I could, he stood and stepped outside the tent. I followed him. The night air was cooler. The sky was a clear black dome, full of stars that seemed strangely gentle for a place that had taken so much. Harper stood near the edge of the tent row, hands on his hips, staring at the horizon, the one we'd be leaving tomorrow. "You okay?" I asked. He didn't turn around. "No," he said. "Not really?" I stepped next to him. "What's wrong?" He let out a slow breath. "It doesn't feel real." "What doesn't?" "Leaving." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Going home. I spent so long trying to survive here. I'm not sure I know how to be anything else." I nodded. "I get that." Harper stared at the stars. "Back home, I used to worry about things like bills and work and stupid stuff. But now, I don't know if I can care about any of it again." "You will," I said softly. "In time." He glanced at me. "You think so?" I nodded. "Yeah, but we have to let ourselves." Harper swallowed hard. "The men who didn't make it, they deserve to go home too." I nodded. "We carry them with us." Harper whispered. "I hope that's enough." "It has to be," I said. A long silence settled between us, not awkward, not heavy, just understanding. Harper took a breath and exhaled slowly. "Get some sleep," he said. "Big day tomorrow." I nodded. "You too." We walked back to the tent together. Inside, the others were quiet now. Cruz prayed softly. Danny drifted off. Ellis organized his bag for the flight. Price dozed with a stubborn half-smile on his lips. I sat on my cot and opened Mary's journal one last time in Vietnam. I wrote, "Tomorrow, we step on a plane. Tomorrow, the jungle becomes memory. Tomorrow, the war ends for us, but not inside us. I hope home is big enough to hold the pieces we've brought back." Then I closed the journal and lay back. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came, because tomorrow wasn't another mission. Tomorrow was the road home, and that road was long overdue. Dawn came quiet and pale, like the sky was holding its breath. The whole camp felt suspended, the kind of stillness you only get after too many storms have passed and everyone is afraid of calling it peace. Soldiers moved like ghosts between the tents, gear slung low, tired eyes watching us as we packed up what little we owned. The convoy trucks sat lined up near the motor pool, engines rumbling softly as if whispering, "This is real, this is happening, get in." Ellis helped Price stand, one arm wrapped firmly under his. Price hissed through his teeth, but tried to pretend he wasn't hurting. Danny sat on an ammo crate while Cruz adjusted the straps of his crutches. Harper moved between us silently, checking and rechecking bags as if touching them made the moment more believable. I folded Mary's journal slowly, carefully, placing it in the inside pocket of my fatigues. It felt heavier today, or maybe I was just finally feeling the weight of everything I'd written. Harper turned to us. "All right," he said, voice thick. "Let's move out." Price leaned on Ellis and limped toward the trucks. Danny followed, hopping on one good leg, Cruz steadying him. Harper and I were the last ones to walk toward the convoy. The truck bed was lined with men. Some rotated out with us, others wounded enough to be flown home earlier. Their faces were distant, hollow-eyed. They looked like us. We climbed aboard. The metal rattled under our boots, vibrating with the engine's low hum. Ellis sat beside Price, checking his bandages again, even though he'd just done it 10 minutes before. Danny positioned his crutches, wiped his eyes, and tried to smile. Cruz sat with his rosary wrapped around both hands, lips moving silently. Harper stood near the tailgate, staring out toward the jungle one last time. I followed his gaze. The tree line swayed gently in the early morning breeze, innocent and green. Someone who had never fought here might have thought it beautiful, but we saw it for what it was, a graveyard, a predator, a thing that kept pieces of men. A medic climbed into the truck and tapped the side. We roll in one. Harper finally climbed into the bed, sitting opposite me. For a moment, he didn't look like a sergeant. He didn't look like a leader. He looked like a man trying to process a life he thought he'd lost a long time ago. The tailgate locked, the trucks lurched forward, and just like that, we were leaving. The road out of camp felt longer than it had ever been. Every dip in the dirt path, every crooked palm, every clump of tall grass seemed burned into my memory. It was strange, suddenly noticing all the things you never really saw until you knew you'd never see them again. Danny leaned forward, gripping the wooden rail with white knuckles. "I can't believe it," he whispered. "I can't believe we're actually going." Cruz smiled gently. "Have faith." "Faith got me through a lot," Danny said, voice trembling. "But this feels unreal," Ellis nudged him. "Real enough for you to stop crying, huh?" Danny sniffed. "Maybe." Price chuckled softly. "Don't worry, kid. I'll cry enough for both of us." The humor wasn't loud. It wasn't joyful. It was fragile, but alive. Harper leaned his head back against the metal siding, staring at the pale sky. "You know," he said, "I've been dreaming about this day since the valley, but now that it's here." "Feels wrong?" I asked. Harper nodded slowly. "It feels like leaving them behind." We didn't ask who he meant. We knew. Rivers, McBride, Sanders, the boys killed in the ambush, those lost in the jungle, the ones blown apart in the depot blast, the ones carried out in silence. Ellis placed a hand on Harper's knee. "We don't leave them behind," he said. "They come with us." Harper didn't respond right away. He just closed his eyes. We rumbled on. When the trucks reached the airfield, the morning had brightened into something almost gentle. The runway stretched ahead of us, shimmering with heat, flanked by watchtowers and lines of cargo crates. And there, at the center of it all, a C-141 Starlifter, gray, massive, engines idling, ramp lowered like an open jaw waiting to swallow us into the sky. Danny sucked in a breath. That's our ride?" Cruz laughed softly. "See, hermano, that's home." The medic attending us began unloading the wounded first. "Let's move," he called out, "one at a time." Ellis helped Price to the tailgate, where two orderlies supported him down and onto a rolling stretcher. Price grunted, but didn't complain. "Tell him I didn't scream," he muttered at Ellis. Ellis smirked. "I'll engrave it on your medal." "My what?" Price asked. "You heard me." Cruz and Danny followed, moving slowly, determinedly. Danny stopped halfway down the ramp and looked back at us with wide, wet eyes. Harper clapped him on the shoulder. "You made it, soldier." Danny nodded so hard his chin quivered. We all did. When they were settled inside the plane, it was just Harper and me left at the truck. He didn't move right away. "You go ahead," he murmured. "I'll catch up." I stepped down and waited for him on the tarmac. Harper didn't move. He was staring at the horizon, at the place where the jungle met the sky, at the place where everything we'd survived still lived in pieces. He whispered something I couldn't quite hear, then exhaled slowly and stepped down. "Ready?" I asked quietly. "No," he said, "but I'm going anyway." We walked toward the plane together. Inside, the air was cool from the overhead fans. The walls were lined with cargo nets and fold-down seats. The wounded lay strapped onto stretchers. Medics moved between them, checking IVs, adjusting pillows. Ellis sat beside Price, talking softly. Cruz tucked Danny's crutches beneath his seat and ran his thumb across the rosary. Harper and I took seats along the wall. A flight officer closed the ramp, sealing us inside. The engines roared louder. The plane trembled beneath us. Danny grabbed Cruz's sleeve. "We're leaving," he whispered. "We're really leaving." Cruz nodded. "See, we are." The plane began to move, rolling down the runway. Everything inside me tightened. My hands, my chest, my breath. I gripped the seat harness and whispered without thinking, "Mary, I'm coming home." Harper stared straight ahead, jaw set, eyes shining with something he refused to let fall. Ellis wiped his face. "Dust," he muttered. Price smirked from his stretcher. "Yeah, dust." Cruz smiled. Danny cried openly. The sound wasn't sorrow, it wasn't fear, it was release. The engines roared to full power. The plane gained speed. Faster, faster, faster. The nose lifted, my stomach dropped, the wheels left the ground, and just like that, Vietnam began to fall away beneath us. The brown rivers, the green canopy, the scars of battle, the fire-blackened edges of last night's clearing, the wire, the jungle, the ghosts. Harper closed his eyes as we climbed. "We made it," he whispered. I looked out the small porthole window and watched the jungle shrink into patches of dark and light. a memory dissolving into distance. I opened Mary's journal one last time on the flight. I wrote, "Today, the war let go of me, but I don't know when I'll let go of it." Then I added, "We are going home, not as the boys who left, but as the men who survived." I hope that's enough. I closed the journal gently. The engines hummed, the sky opened in front of us, and for the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe in tomorrow. I used to believe there would come a day when the war felt far away, a day when the memories softened, when the names stayed names and not ghosts, when sleep didn't feel like a battlefield. I kept waiting for that day. It never came. What did come was life, slowly, quietly, in pieces. The world didn't greet me with fanfare when I stepped off that plane. It didn't ask about the men I served with. It didn't ask what it took to stay alive or what it cost to survive. It just moved on. I remember walking through the airport in my uniform, duffel over my shoulder, boots still stained with the red-brown mud of Vietnam. People stared without looking. They smiled without meaning it. They gave polite nods that evaporated before they even reached me. The war was loud. Home was quiet. Too quiet. For the first few months, I woke up every night tangled in sweat-damp sheets, gasping for air that wasn't thick with smoke or fear. Mary would switch on the lamp without saying a word. She would place a glass of water on my nightstand. She never asked what I saw behind my eyelids. She didn't need to. It lived between us like a ghost neither of us dared to name. Some nights, I heard the river. Some nights, I heard the crack of rifle fire echoing through the valley. Some nights, I heard Harper's voice calling my name over the gunfire. Some nights, I heard Danny crying in the mud, begging us not to leave him behind. 3 months after coming home, I found myself standing in the grocery store staring at a stack of canned peaches for nearly 10 minutes. A woman asked if I needed help. I didn't answer. I couldn't speak. Something about the color of the label reminded me of lantern light against wooden crates. I left the store without buying anything. Mary didn't go inside a grocery store with me for a long time after that. She learned me gently, patiently, softly. She learned that I flinched when doors slammed. She learned that I couldn't sit with my back to a room. She learned that fireworks made me leave town. She learned that crowded places made my breath shorten. She never asked why. She didn't need the explanations. She loved the man who returned, even though he wasn't the man who left. I was learning to love him, too. About a year after I came home, I received my first letter from Harper. The envelope was thin, folded unevenly, addressed in handwriting I would have recognized in a hurricane. Inside, the letter was short, almost painfully so. "Thompson, I'm still alive. Price is, too. Danny's leg healed. Ellis is working at a clinic. Cruz left the service and went home to his family. We all carry it differently, but we carry it. You're not alone. Harper." I read that letter until the paper softened at the folds. Over the next few years, more letters came. One from Danny, full of clumsy handwriting and hopeful scribbles about a girl he met. One from Ellis, describing the way he still reached for his medic bag when a car backfired. One from Cruz, who sent a photo of a church where he lit candles for the men we lost. One from Price, short as expected. "Still mean, still alive. You'd be proud." Harper wrote the most. He always had more weight to unload than he wanted anyone to know. Sometimes his letters were long, rambling things about the roads he'd driven across the country to quiet his mind. Sometimes they were 2 lines long. "Nightmares bad this week. Hope you're doing better." We didn't talk about the war in detail, not in writing, not in words. Some things lived better in silence. But every time a letter arrived, every time I opened one and saw the handwriting of a man who crawled through the jungle beside me, something steadied in my chest. Living felt less like a burden, more like a promise. Years went by. The jungle followed me for most of them, in small ways, in big ways, in ways that no one who stayed home could fully understand. When the government finally formalized our recognition and sent medals in the mail, I put mine in a drawer. The medal felt cold, heavy, not mine alone. It belonged to Rivers, to the 3 men we buried in the valley, to the EO boys who didn't make it back to the wire. Mary asked once why I wouldn't display it. I told her it felt wrong. She understood. She always understood. One fall afternoon, maybe 10 years after coming home, I found myself sitting on the porch while the sun sank low behind the trees. A breeze drifted through the yard, brushing the wind chimes against each other with soft, metallic sounds. The kind of peaceful evening I used to dream about in the heat of the jungle. I opened Mary's journal, the original one, the one I carried through the war, pages worn and edges soft. I ran my fingers across the ink, the tears, the mud stains that never washed out. Every word felt like a younger version of me, calling from a world no one could ever return to. As I closed the journal, I realized something. I had survived Vietnam, but I had also survived the years after it, and that survival meant something too. It meant choosing to live, choosing to heal, choosing to remember without drowning, choosing to walk forward without leaving the past behind. That night, I sat under the dim porch light and wrote one final entry, not in Mary's journal, but on a fresh page of a new one. The war never ended on the day we left. It ended in pieces over years, in the small acts of choosing life again, in the voices of the men who wrote to me, in the arms of the woman who waited for me, in the quiet moments when I let myself breathe without guilt. We came home broken, but we came home, and in the end, that was enough. Sometimes I still wake up in the early hours of the morning and listen, expecting to hear the rumble of distant artillery or the hiss of river water against the hull of a boat carrying explosives. But instead, I hear the hum of the refrigerator, the whir of the ceiling fan, the soft breath of the woman next to me, the sound of a life rebuilt. A life I once thought I would never live long enough to see. And every morning when I open my eyes, before the ghosts have time to gather, I whisper the same thing I whispered on the flight home. I made it. Not because the war didn't take pieces of me, but because it didn't take all of me. Because I walked out of the jungle, because I survived the night before the last push, because I left Vietnam with my brothers alive beside me, because the road home, though long and broken, was still a road, and I followed it all the way back